Hello and welcome, and thanks for tuning in. You're watching WION World is One, and this is our special weekly broadcast of the WION VOA co-production with me, Priyanka Sharma. Our first story today in this broadcast, let's get started. After a lengthy battle nominating Kevin McCarthy to serve as Speaker of the US House of Representatives, Republicans are now looking ahead to their priorities in the 118th Congress. And VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson previews looming debates over border security, the debt ceiling, as well as investigations into the Biden administration. Take a look.
Republican leader Kevin McCarthy emerged from a rare four-day battle to become Speaker of the House.
The House will be in order.
Touting Republicans' accomplishments in their first full week of work.
Government should be here to help you, not to go after you. Be able to protect the unborn. We just protected the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, where the president can no longer deplete it and sell our oil to China. And we opened the House back up for the public.
But analysts say the conservative caucus that objected to McCarthy as Speaker will continue to be a problem.
He is in a weakened position, but his biggest problem is that his margin is so small. So he has only, a 5-seat margin.
Many Republicans object to resetting the nation's debt ceiling, a stance that could have global consequences if America's credit rating suffers as a result.
The American people elected Republicans to get our fiscal house in order, and get our fiscal house in order we will.
With inflation still high in the United States, Democrats have warned against government spending cuts.
These spending cuts harm families, communities throughout the U.S. that are already struggling with inflation and the cost of living.
Republicans have also launched multiple investigative committees.
Today, we will counter the Chinese Communist Party with our Select Committee on China. We will vote to protect every American's constitutional rights with the new Select Subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government.
And President Joe Biden and his family are expected to be a subject of Republican investigations, including concerning their financial transactions, despite Democrats' objections.
Instead of trying to find ways to work together, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle continue to lean into an extreme MAGA Republican agenda, which seems to be focused on trying to investigate the president's family, not make a difference in the lives of everyday Americans.
The Biden administration's immigration policy will also come under scrutiny.
If you look at the operational goals, securing the border, securing our cyber border,
as well as billions of dollars in U.S. aid to Ukraine.
The House Republicans are split also, but Speaker McCarthy has indicated he might side with the elements who want to push back on funding.
But any legislation passed in the House will have to be agreed to in the Democratic majority U.S. Senate. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
And for more analysis, joining me now for more updates is VOA's Jessica Stone. She joins us live from the White House. Jessica, thanks for joining us. Now, with a divided Congress, there's not much legislation that is likely to make it to President Joe Biden's desk. As Catherine just reported, House Republicans plan to investigate the president on a few fronts, including his handling of classified documents. What's the latest on that?
Well, you may recall that U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland has already appointed a special counsel to investigate President Donald Trump, not only for the January 6, 2021 assault on the Capitol, but for his mishandling, alleged mishandling of classified documents. Now, this will be similar in that the Justice Department has already launched an investigation into the handling of classified documents by President Biden. There will be parallel investigations by two separate special counsels, and then very similar to the series of House Oversight Committee investigations we saw late last year by the January 6th committee, the House Oversight Committee, now under the control of Republicans, will be investigating not only President Biden's handling of classified documents, but also his business dealings related to his son Hunter. And it is also looking into ethics violations connected to his son Hunter. All of this relates a very quick-moving story. On Monday, we had the White House counsel tell us that classified documents had been discovered in the private office and in the home of President Joe Biden in November and in December. All of this happening before he ran for president, and since then, as I said, more classified documents have been found in his home.
Right. Jessica, there's also an ongoing question about whether Congressman George Santos will remain in office. This week, fellow New York Republicans called for him to step down after he admitted lying on his resume. What's the latest that you have on that?
Yeah, Santos is showing absolutely no signs of leaving his post, of resigning, and it's really not costing him anything in terms of his position in Congress. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has been very clear he will allow Santos to be on committees. He hasn't taken anything away from him as such, and he has not called for his resignation. House Democrats, meantime, are calling for his resignation, also calling for an ethics investigation into allegations that he used campaign finance money to pay for his own rent, that he lied on his resume. And local New York Republicans have now said that they are refusing to work with him to access the U.S. federal government. They literally said they will go around him to help their constituents. And also, one more investigation. The Brazilian authorities now saying they plan to reopen an investigation down in Brazil related to allegations of fraud against Santos. So a lot of investigations going on and swirling around Representative George Santos.
Right, Jessica, thanks for those updates. Stay with us on this special broadcast. We'll come back to you for one more story. The World Health Organization says that China is still severely underreporting deaths for COVID-19, even as Chinese passengers are traveling internationally again. 12 nations, including the US, have all implemented restrictions on Chinese travelers. VOA's Mandarin White House correspondent has now secured an exclusive interview with Dr. Nihat Bhadelia, two senior advisors for White House's global COVID response. Take a look.
So what type of test results will be accepted from the entrance from China? Does it have to be from a reputable company like, Abbott with a QR code, or a doctor or a lab's note, or simply a photo of the test kit?
Thanks so much, Paris. So what's required is a viral test that looks for a current infection. So it can be a nucleic acid amplification test, such as a PCR, or a rapid antigen test, as long as it's testing to see if you might currently be infected. Passengers can also use self-tests if they have a component which includes telehealth services associated with the manufacturer, which includes real-time video and audio supervision. So for example, when I've traveled globally in the past, I would do the self-test with the proctored, telehealth service. I would then receive a test result in my email, which I can then either take with me to the airport or upload if the airline allows that beforehand.
But we also know that could be bad actors. So what would that be a punishment, offense? And what would that be? The punishment would be besides of just denial of the entry.
Yeah, a good point. The CDC order mentions that activities such as providing inaccurate or misleading information to the government could be subject to criminal offense charges. So that's part of the CDC order as well.
How do you trace someone travel to the United States through a third country, especially if that traveler enter the third country, stay there for a couple of days, and then come to the United States?
Yeah, this is important and it can be confusing for passengers. So I'm glad you're covering this, Paris. One of the things that the order requires is that if you are in one of the designated airports as a stopover before you come to the U.S., and you have been in either China, mainland China, Hong Kong, or Macau, that you are going to get a test that you will, in those designated airports, you will also be required to present a test that you've done before travel to the United States. So the three airports that are designated are Vancouver International Airport, Toronto Pearson Airport, and in South Korea, Incheon Airport as well. Testing is not to be meant to be punitive to individual passengers, right? What is our goal? A mounting international concern about the surges in PRC right now with COVID, but more importantly, the fact that there hasn't been transparent sharing of epidemiological data as well as genomic surveillance data. Just to give you a sense, right? It's not so much that someone is positive, it's that they are coming from an area that we don't have as much data about the type of viruses that might be circulating. So China's sharing of genomic surveillance data compared to globally what other countries are doing or regionally what's being shared is much, much lower. China shares about 1.1 sequence per million people in its population. As compared to us, we share about 537 sequences per million. UK shares over 600 per million people in their population. Thailand, 31 sequences per million people. We need to see a lot more genomic data to get a sense of what viruses is circulating. The other thing that we haven't seen is good real-time data on ICU admissions or hospitalizations. And the reason these things are necessary is that if there is a variant of concern, lack of access to this data delays identification of those variants, and then it leaves our public health officials less prepared to respond to new variants that may arise that could increase the severity of disease. It could impact our diagnostics, our vaccines, our treatments. China has an existing requirement for all international travelers, including those coming from the US, that matches what we have also put into place. So that already exists as a measure that's equal in place.
For more on the story, we still have Jessica Stone with us from Voice of America. Jessica, the Pentagon is preparing to change its purchasing priorities for space rockets due to the US-China competition. What can you tell us on that front?
Well, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson recently told Politico that he considers the U.S. in a space race with China, and the Pentagon says it wants to make countering China in space its top priority when awarding bids for rockets, even more than reliability and cost. The Pentagon cited China's space capabilities as a major concern in its recently released National Defense Strategy, and the National Security Space Launch Program has a $1.2 billion budget to purchase rockets this year for military and spy use. They're very concerned about hacking and intrusions on the rocket technology and on the satellites themselves. They're working on technology to combat that. Currently, 2 rocket companies in the United States make those rockets that are used in the United States for this purpose. They are SpaceX, run by Elon Musk, as well as a joint venture by Lockheed Martin and Boeing.
This weekend, the US and Taiwan will meet for their first round of negotiations on a trade agreement. What's on the agenda?
Well, they will begin on Saturday, in fact, and there are 3 days of these talks. They really have gotten a head start on setting the groundwork for them. They want them to go quickly. They already had consultative talks in November. They only announced this initiative in June, so this is pretty fast moving. They're going to stay away from issues of contentious nature and focus really just on service regulations, anti-corruption standards, and small business opportunities, among others. This is really structured in a way to allow them to peel off results as they get them and announce them, begin to get them moving. And we know that from Taipei's perspective, they want to see and sign an agreement by the end of this year. So this is a pretty fast-moving free trade agreement. We've covered a lot of these, and all signs point to trying to make this smooth and quick so that something can be solidified by the end of the year. Priyanka?
Right, Jessica, thanks so much for all those updates, and thanks for joining us on WION at this hour.